All right, let's recap risk management. In risk management, we start with risk identification. And here, it is important that all our assets are identified because if we don't know what we have, how can we possibly protect it? A threat is a potential harmful incident. A vulnerability is a weakness that can allow that threat to do harm. Remember, to have a risk, we need to both have a threat and a vulnerability. The equation is risk equals threat times vulnerability, and sometimes you'll hear both threat and vulnerability referred to as likelihood. You may also see that equation as risk equals threat times vulnerability times impact. For the exam, do you need to know all this? Probably. I would. I think it's an integral part enough of risk management that they may give you 1 or 2 questions on this. Then we have the total risk. That's the risk times vulnerability times the asset value. And then whenever we do mitigations, the residual risk is the total risk minus the countermeasures. In risk identification, we identify our risk management team. We decide what is in and out of scope, what specifically are we focusing on, and then we need to know the acceptable levels of risk, which is basically the risk appetite that our enterprise has, and that is set by senior management. We then do the actual risk assessment. That's where we have the qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. Qualitative is quality. It's kind of vague. It's kind of a feeling. That's pretty good quality. Quantitative is quantity. It's a number. It's specific. That's where we put the numbers to the feelings from the qualitative risk analysis. Then we choose the recommendations for risk responses. That could be risk mitigation. We reduce the risk. We put in some sort of countermeasure. It could be risk transference or risk sharing. That is most likely insurance, but it could also be starting a new project with a 50-50 partner. Then we have risk acceptance. We know the risk is there. We have done the analysis, but the countermeasures just don't make financial sense. That was the $250,000 loss, but it's going to cost us $1 million to implement. We don't implement. We just accept the risk. Then we have risk avoidance. This is us not issuing the laptops. We know the risk is there. It's not feasible to do mitigation. We can't transfer. We can't accept the risk. Well, then we do risk avoidance. We don't issue the laptops, or we don't build our data center in an area that's prone to flooding. And those 4 are the only acceptable responses. Risk rejection is never ever okay. That's us knowing the risk is there, but not doing anything. We just kind of ignore it. That is negligence, and you are now liable. In the qualitative risk analysis, we use the risk analysis matrix. How likely is something to happen? How bad is it if it does? And then depending on that score, we go to the quantitative risk analysis on the ones that scored high enough. We put all our risks in a risk register, and whenever we treat the risk, we add it to the risk register. So if we have chosen mitigation, the risk score should be lowered. Now, if that is not lowered enough, well, then we do another mitigation until the risk is at an acceptable level. We then covered the quantitative risk analysis. That's where you had to do a little math. We had the example with a laptop. The laptop was worth $1,000. The PII on the laptop, $10,000. If we lose the laptop, it's going to be gone. The exposure factor is going to be 100%. So the single loss expectancy, that is the asset value times the exposure factor, was $11,000. The annual rate of occurrence was how often do we lose the laptops? We lose 25 every year, meaning our annualized loss expectancy, or ALE, is going to be $275,000. The countermeasure we chose to implement was full disk encryption and remote wipe capabilities. That's going to cost us $100,000. Since $100,000 is less than $275,000 or really $250,000, we choose to implement. We're still going to lose the laptops, right? We're still going to have that cost of $25,000. But the 25 times 10,000 for the PII we lost every time we lose the laptops, that is saved. And that is really how all risk management is done. We need a positive ROI. There's no point in spending $100 to making sure that $50 are safe. Then we talked about KDI, Key Goal Indicator, and goal was the overarching one. Then KPI, Key Performance Indicator, was the specific one. This task is doing this well. For us with risk management, this could be these countermeasures we have implemented are doing this well. They are within the baseline of where they should be. They're still functioning. And then we had KRI, Key Risk Indicator. And we use that to demonstrate a risk to the organization, something we're facing or something new we're starting to do. How risky is that endeavor? Then after the risk assessment, we do the risk response and mitigation. And remember, this is the only one that is due diligence. And this is where senior management has chosen to act on our recommendations or chosen something else. We now implement. That's where we do the mitigation, the transfer, the acceptance, or the avoidance. We then update the risk register to make sure that it is recorded which of the 4 mitigation strategies we chose and what it did to the risk number. Then we proceed into risk monitoring and reporting. We of course need to make sure that the risk responses that we implemented are as effective and as efficient as they need to be. We also need to monitor for new risks. And with that, we are done with risk management. I hope this has helped you get a better understanding of how and why we do risk management and how it is an ongoing process. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next lecture.